Hello.
Eli? Eli?
Thank you for your speech. Give you a little. Hi guys, welcome to round 3 for Clock 2016, and congratulations on making it this far. We just finished turning up basically. In opening government, you're Maketab Wong again. In opening opposition, put a tank in a mall. Alright. In closing government, APUA, and closing opposition, we're breaking 8. Hopeful team. Is Agrim and what's your name? Angel?
Yeah.
Angel on the panel. So on by the time next time. Yeah.
Panel, it's important in this sort of debate to be very realistic about it. So we're not trying to be like saving the entire world and making everyone liberal and expose ideas again. This is not a debate about people that in this motion would fall back on their own existing echo chambers. It's not about people that would simply go on other things like 4chan, Onion Chat, what have you, and TV, etc., and lock themselves in an echo chamber. What this debate is instead about is a large subset of people that we posit to you whose worldviews are constructed and i.e. causally related and developed solely and exclusively by the social media, to the extent that we can show to you, we can alter the way of the content that exposed to you. We say that posits that makes a massive marginal difference and change this debate. So if they want to talk about like how this doesn't work, well, too bad to all. 3 things I'm going to talk about before that debate. Number 1, we're going to have a diverse range of content, right? So literally we're going to have an algorithm, and hopefully it's going to work better than the one that worked in test, right? It's going to be able to like fundamentally identify a wide range of different things, of views on a spectrum across multiple spectra, not only politically, economically speaking, all of these different diversity of views, and represent them in a proportionate way, including extreme content, of course, so we're perfectly happy to bite bullet off. Second of all, we're going to do it discreetly. We're not going to be publicizing and going out like, boom, this is what the government is doing right now. That's not going to happen. But third of all, we posit to you that we can always have the incentives like funding and positive rewards and subsidies, etc. But the exclusive difference, and the reason why we're going to be different from their counter model, is we're going to force them and bite the bullet that there will be negative measures introduced that punish them. So that's the counter model. Here's why. It's not going to start. 3 things. Why echo chambers are bad. Second of all, why exactly we have to force them and alternatives won't work. And third of all, why exclusive exposure by social media and not any other means is so important. First, I want to talk about why social media is important in constructing people's worldviews, right? Recognize, number 1, that there already is an existing algorithm imposed by social media companies that prioritize content and things that their user likes to engage in and preferences things that they've shown an existing interest in. Note that if opposition wants to say the user constructs the media, that's not true. Because in many cases, the initial exposure and the content that come through that decides the algorithm is by random chance, right? That if you're born into a neighborhood that's more conservative or conservative family or society gives you this echo chamber of conservatism, it's not your choice that locks you into it. So the user doesn't generate it, society generates it. There was already a lack of consent. We posit to you, it's about using that consent wisely. Second thing to note is that content is also already prioritized according to this algorithm, in a sense that things like liberal outlets are not available to people who are conservative and use Facebook and vice versa. So you wouldn't see Breitbart or Fox News on a newsfeed of someone like me, or you wouldn't see my newsfeed or my post on someone who's really ultra-conservative, right? What does that actually mean? We think there are 3 harms to that. Number 1, there's a construction of what is factually true and non-factually true, because presumably what you are exposed to in an emotive setting that you engage with regularly constructs what you think is true or not. That's why this whole narrative that the NHS, upon leaving Brexit, would give $350 million back or quid back to people, is conceptualized as a truth and a fact, even if it isn't, right? Because calling out doesn't really work when your social media is inundated with, we're going to get $350 million back in reality. Second of all to note, it creates your frames of reference and a way you conceptualize what is good and what is bad, right? It constructs your morality and principles in that respect. It's important to note here that there's no full consent in opting into this process, because the way the media arranges and sorts out these content and telling you what is right or wrong or what your moral values are not things that you opt into fully. You don't consent and press the button like, I understand that the media will control me. You opt into it, but that opting in process in and of itself is already a manufactured consent directed by the media. 3 harms follow from this echo chamber. 1, you demonize the other, right? Because when you're exposed to regular content that tells you it's only one side of the story, that's when you start seeing people going like, Brexiteers are all dumb fuckers, or people go like, these are liberal elites trying to fuck over our country. Or in America, that's where this bipartisanship or polarization amongst audiences of Republicans and Democrats. Realistically, we don't think social media causes all of it entirely, but we posit that social media causes a large chunk of it because lots of people use it. We're not here to prove it's entirely causationally responsible. Second of all, you refuse to compromise in issues like voting and also legislative bills. Right? That's where you get things like deadlocks and people lobbying for things like filibustering and deadlock and like fundamental legislative breakdown in that respect. But third of all, you also create room for radical politicians to then be like, oh, these people are getting content and awareness on Facebook. I'm going to turn to populism and radicalism to get votes. This happens on a local level, right? Because realistically, Le Pen doesn't, go into radical politics because of Facebook. We say that many small Le Pens in a local constituencies and states of France do go into it because it gets them the necessary traction. So that's the unique niche nuance we bring to you. Why is forcing legitimate? First, alternatives won't work. Subsidies, positive incentive, blah, 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 won't work because of 3 reasons. Number 1, investors tend to be risk averse, but they don't necessarily want to accrue benefits or revenue. They're not revenue maximizers, they're risk averse. Why is that important? Because investors or people that control companies wouldn't be like, you get $100 extra bucks, let's go do it. Because there might be a social shaming or stigmatization effect when they get caught and found out. Right? We posit to you though that they will care a lot more when you be like, oh shit, if I don't do this, we'll lose money actively. And that's where you get like the lobbying in terms of large investors, but also the management within these companies. Then they start giving a fuck. In the status quo, they don't. But second of all, an added bonus does not manifest on people who invest in your company in the same way as a potential big penalty, right? We need that stick in order to force this discourse to happen in the boardrooms, in the decision making. Third of all, game theory, basic stuff, right? Look, recognize that right now, if Facebook moves towards this sort of filtering, but Twitter doesn't, then Facebook presumes and expects to lose out on market share. Similarly, if Twitter does that, but Facebook doesn't, it also loses out. Therefore, by the way, if duopolies or oligopolies work, there's no incentive in the status quo to do so. Why can government force this? A, we see this precedent, right? Government forces it to prevent harm, harm's principle. When harm is exerted on society and is an exclusive causal link that proves that harm, we impose a limitation on that liberty. But second of all, we also say that we already have precedents in terms of corporate social responsibility that manifest in the status quo. Now I want to talk about how this actually works. 4 layers of mechanism. 1, unique awareness. So I can shut off the TV, I can not read a book, I can choose not to read a newspaper. I can do all of these things to lock myself in an echo chamber. But I can't be like Facebook, I'm going to change the algorithm you work by because Facebook determines it. So the exclusive exposure you have to alternative viewpoints in the first place is uniquely coming through from having that algorithm that presents you with the content. But second of all, we think a lot of people are not radicals. Like they wouldn't be like saying, no, shut off Facebook. But instead, a lot of them are turned radical because right now they don't have the ability to expose themselves to these alternative viewpoints. When you have Facebook that presents alternative content with human users and faces to it, you humanize the content, create an identitarian resonance, right? That is where a moderate conservative wouldn't be locked into Tea Party rhetoric and gradually go further down the drain and become a really, really alt-right person because you have these outlets and alternative for them to resonate with in terms of moderate centrist liberals, but also those on the far left. We posit to you that not everyone will turn off Facebook, and to those people that do, we're not trying to change them anyway, so that's useless, right? Finally, we posit, it's important to recognize here, a lot of people use Facebook and Twitter for reasons that mean that even if we implement this change, they won't move away from 4chan, because 4chan and all of these alt-right forums don't have profiles, don't have timelines, don't have things that you can add. There's lots of unique functions that big social networking sites have, and these are overwhelming incentives for users to stay on them, even if the policy is implemented. For all of these reasons, I'm so proud to propose today.
Thanks to the speaker for his speech. Otherwise, the lead will just. Sorry, we didn't do gender pronouns. But sorry.
I prefer gender neutral language.
Okay. Okay. Indifferent.
Yeah.
Indifferent.
Indifferent.
Apathetic.
So really, the only contentious bit of the first speaker, Prime Minister's speech, came in the last minute of his case when he talked to us about why this is actually going to produce a good outcome in terms of making people maybe more moderate or listen to it the other side. The reality of people that we currently see is that they're not monolithic in the way that the opening government believes that they are. They're not all monolithically liberal. or conservative, people have a spectrum and a basket of views. But in the end goal that we want to have on both sides of the house is that we want people to talk to each other, that we think that forcing corporations to have an idea, to let people have a ideological diverse range of content is singularly the worst way in which we're going to achieve that outcome. If anything, it causes and mobilizes the far end of the spectrum on either side to become more hostile to the other side and to become more hostile to these social media sites, which we think is bad. 2 points in substantive. Firstly, on why we reduce interactions between people who have opposing views, and secondly, why we increase polarization of broader political movements, which we think is ultimately harmful. Before that, just some rebuttal to the contentious bit of the Prime Minister's case. Again, we've already told you about why people are not monolithic in the way that they claim they are, but also social media sites are just not the only way in which people interact. They also interact on things like forums. They also talk about things like, they also look at, celebrity figures pages. I'm not sure. But we think that articles are singularly the worst way which are going to try and change people's minds. Why? Because articles are a unilateral transfer of information in a single direction, right? You're not trying to contest or talk to the person who's writing the article. You're merely you're merely taking in the information that is written in the article. No, thank you. So we think that on your side of the house, by forcing this content on the people, you're not encouraging discourse in the way that you think it is. All you're doing is compelling them or forcing them to accept that these viewpoints exist, but not to do anything, no thank you, much more beyond that. The things that he talked about how investors will be turned away and therefore there's risk averse and stuff like consent, maybe that's true, and maybe that's we can probably concede that. We're not quite sure why this is necessarily relevant in the first place in this debate, and we're happy to concede that as well. The rest of my the stuff will be integrated. The first one, reducing interaction. No, thank you. The first observation we will make is that people naturally interact and confront people with different opinions. How does this happen? In a social group that you have, you exist across a spectrum. So you might, within my university group, for instance, we might be broadly liberal, but we are liberal to varying extents. And on different issues, we are liberal to varying degrees. We might even be conservative on that particular issue in that particular point in time. This means that even within your own social group, there are flashpoints for discourse. Because, for instance, on gay marriage, for instance, someone who is far more socially liberal is going to be willing to accept that gay marriage ought to be legalized, for instance. But if you are slightly more socially conservative, even if you might be broadly liberal, you might say, this might not be the good time for us to have gay marriage, for instance. But what happens is that we are naturally willing to gravitate towards these forms of discourse in status quo and to debate on these issues with other people within our social group. No, thank you. Importantly, we think that this provides a self-regulating mechanism for people to stay within those social groups and to discuss them and to use social media sites as the way in which you interact with other people in these, on these issues. No, thank you. What happens on their side of the house? And we think these interactions are generally important if we want to have debate in discourse and to try and change other people's minds. But what happens on their side of the house? On their side of the house, when they force people to read these views, when they force people to accept that these views are valid and legitimate without engaging in any form of debate and discourse, what happens is that they turn them away from ever wanting to talk about these issues in the first place. Because if a person is naturally disinclined to accept this view, no thank you, then just seeing these views and just reading this article on one side is not necessarily going to change your views. But more importantly, we think that it's highly ineffective to use articles in the first place. No, like the reason that this is true is only 4 minutes. The reason that this is true is because you to click on those titles. Articles require you to actually read through those articles. So at the point where you see something that's just against your view in the first place, you're just not going to click the article at all. You're just going to go to the direct source of that information in the first place in terms of having things like, so for instance, if you're a liberal, you're just going to directly go to the Huffington Post or to Jezebel. You're not going to engage on the social media site to take you in a moment, which means that those flashpoints of discourse don't happen at all before that closing.
I think it's quite funny to say that people are not going to click on those articles. I think presumably some people will, and if that is a marginal benefit, why isn't that what it is?
Yes, but you need to prove that marginal benefit. That's the first thing. But secondly, we've already shown you why just clicking on the article and reading the article does not change people's minds, because you are not being convinced by someone who is within your social group or someone who you trust to be that that view is necessarily correct. You're just reading it from an abstracted point of view, which doesn't necessarily change your mind on anything. What's the comparative difference, though, frankly, on our side of the house is that these social media channels merely remain as an open avenue for people to receive these forms of differing opinions for people of their own social group, but also to take their own initiative to maybe seek out information if they wish to. But social media sites do not force them to read this ideological diversification content, no thank you, even if they're not comfortable with this information. But if we also accept that social media is currently being used for people to engage and interact with one another, that at least on our side of the house, they stay on these social media sites and they interact with one another on these media sites, which I think is ultimately the most important way that we get people to talk and try to change their minds. Let's now talk about how we increase the polarization. We need to recognize, no thank you, that people are instinctively against changing, being forced to change their own opinions. If I am a liberal, I don't like to be told that I ought to be more conservative on this view. Conversely, if I'm more conservative, I don't like to be. If I'm shown a liberal article, a couple of liberal articles, I don't like to be. I don't like to be forced to see these articles and go. Maybe social media, Facebook and Twitter are trying to get me to change my views on this. At the point where social media sites are being seen as trying to police the way in which you see these sorts of views and the way that you try to change in your general worldview, what happens is that these people become more hostile towards the other side. They also become more hostile towards social media sites. How does this happen? Because when you see social media sites as being an avenue of the other side or a tool or instrument of the other side to try and force you to change the views, not just an individual is going to be more hostile, but a broader political movement is likely to treat the other side with far more hostility. Why is this bad? Because at the end of the day, this becomes an issue at elections or political meetings that generates a very toxic atmosphere where they are saying that the other side is out to try and get us. The other side is out to try and get us to change our views and to lose our voting base. This is not something that we want to happen, because ultimately we think that the way in which a political atmosphere is going to be inclusive is if it has a moderate viewpoint that allows for everyone to engage and interact with. For all these reasons, we think that it's far better for social media sites to not do this policy. We're very, very proud to oppose.
I'd like to speak for that speech. Invite the Deputy Prime Minister.
Chair, opening opposition has made some serious strategic errors in this debate. They said that the only really contentious part of our proposal, opening government, is the idea of what are the impacts, right? I think they also disagree then on what are the methods in which we do this. Let's talk about what they agree first, right? They agree that social media has impact and harms, and they also agree that the state should regulate when there is a harm. This is substantive that came from Ryan, and they agree or they concede that these are things that are absolutely necessary. Let's first discuss what does op really want, because within the opposition here has been not very comparative. They have not been willing to defend any kind of alternative besides this idea that we should let things run the way they are, and then they presume or they would rather have us believe that this is self-regulating and that you would I don't know, do they think that people will be able to get out of their echo chambers, or are they simply saying that things will make it worse? It hasn't been clear from leader of opposition. Perhaps DLO can really do that. So I'll first talk about why Brian's substantive was particularly important in this speech, and then I'll talk about my substantive. I'll extend broadly I'll talk about how this shapes industry norms, because we think that social media as a whole has largely rejected or tried to avoid the characterization of them being gatekeepers, which is what they really are, as opposed to being platforms. It's always taken that approach. We'll tell you why this is better for users and how this shapes discourse in the future. But before that, I have two rebuttals to make before I go into what Brian talked about. Firstly, it seems to me that leader of opposition is really fixated on the idea that we are just talking about articles. The debate or the motion talks about content, which includes things like posts, threads, videos, even memes. These are interactive means through which people engage with one another. So we don't think they can simply come up here and say that this debate is only characterized towards articles. We think that the kind of content we're talking about here creates room for people to engage with one another. But even at the very least, people will be turned off. We think that the burden that OG took was not to say that people would definitely be convinced, that people will educate them, that people will definitely moderate. At the very worst, we're willing to acknowledge that people will at least be aware that this is what the other side is thinking. So this is similar, for example, in Twitter, when you say this is what's been discussed in the past few hours while you were gone. Similarly, this is what people have been talking about in other parts of Facebook that you are not part of, because the algorithm prioritizes you being paired up with the interests of people you're very much similar to. And that leads actually to the second rebuttal I have, which is the assertion of self-regulation. They ignore the material that came from Brian that talked about how the idea of how people self-regulate is actually dependent on the frameworks to which that have been shaped for them to begin with. So the extent to which they self-regulate is actually limited by the way that which they view like what someone views to be moderate may still be viewed as extreme in the broader scheme of things. So how do you actually access other alternative views when the algorithms don't make those views necessarily available? Like obviously there's a huge amount of inertia for individuals, social media users. They're not necessarily going to go out there and look these articles to begin with. We think that it's important for you to provide those kind of articles. I think the thing about the internet is, through its sheer convenience, has made it possible for all of us to sit back and have this content provided to us. And we think it's very important to acknowledge that very same context. What's been important from Brian's speech that they have really ignored? Well, it's the idea that awareness and demonization happens, and which side is more likely to provide marginal benefits, right? We think opposition hasn't yet been able to tell us how you will prevent that kind of echo chamber from happening. But we think what's important is that it's not just about people from different ends of the spectrum or polar opposites. It's also about people within the same end of the spectrum. One thing that we need to acknowledge is that frequently, at least within liberalism, there is sometimes a belief that just because you're a white liberal, that your viewpoint of what liberalism is should be defining of what everyone else is, including persons of color. So what we would then say, or what we posit is, through this proposal, by having a diverse range of ideological content, allows you to also see intersectional parts within your very own spectrum, and allows you to at least recognize the very kind of privilege or the kind of ideas that you believe are liberal may yet still be oppressive onto a part within your own group. I mean, that's actually denied, for example, the ability of people like Hillary to recognize, or Hillary or her supporters to recognize that there are some groups that still feel disenfranchised within these broader movements. Before I move on to my substantive, any POIs? No? All right. So, oh yeah, sure.
Clarify to me how suddenly, just because I see it on my social media, I'm actively going to come out and engage with those individuals. Because I can see a post on social media from Sebastian, but that doesn't mean I'm actively going to do anything about it.
Well, there are two reactions to that, right? When you see something that is like enrages you, right? There are two ways you can look about it. You can either ignore it, or you can actually try to debate those people. We think that happens fairly often. That's why you see flame threads among polar opposite friends within your Facebook group, right? Sometimes that happens among people who curate, or deliberately curate people who have ideologically different views within their social group. But we think, secondly, even if you don't necessarily engage with it, at least you're aware that these other groups exist. And and I think sometimes a huge part of posts, sometimes you're curious, like, why do these people think the way they do? And at the very least, we have to watch that kind of curiosity that people don't necessarily have. Like, why do people believe that? Why do people not prioritize Hillary's email scandals, for example? It's something that a lot of conservatives think is very important. We think it's important for them to acknowledge that. So we think this debate, right, acknowledges that there is, within even this idea of moderation, that there are more people in the middle who are willing to click on this than people on the radicals. We think that in any scenario, radicals are not really the target of this debate. We have to talk about people who would be either way, be willing to open, or at least be willing to be educated what other sides necessarily think. So let's move on to my substantive of how it shapes industry norms, towards being more proactive rather than reactive. Twitter and Facebook have been slow to take up measures to protect users because they see themselves primarily as platforms and not gatekeepers. There's a legal reason for this, because the moment they're gatekeepers, the moment they become liable for things like if defamatory content is posted on their platforms, right? But at the same time, they're also loath to require state intervention. They see state intervention as being blunt instrument. So what we're saying is that by having this proposal now, this will have a bigger impact for tech companies that also broader social media platforms or corporations to be more engaging and to be more diverse, but also be more protective of users. This is very important, because if we're talking about safe spaces, which we have this way will be coming from, is that only happens, or the kind of measures that you need to have safe spaces only happens when social media corporations recognize that the role is not simply to have a platform where people engage with one another, but they have responsibility to shape the kind of discourse, or at least to allow people the tools with which they can shape their own discourse. This creates incentives for social media corporations, present and future, to take those very measures. Chair, this debate is really about, side opposition already believes that social media does have this impact. So this debate is really down to which one has at least marginal benefits. I think the most OP can do is show that these has harms, but they haven't shown why they will have any kind of marginal increase in dealing with echo chambers and the demonization of individuals. We at least show, at the very worst case, there are at least marginal benefits in education and awareness. We're proud to open.
I can speak the speech, and now I'm glad to deputy officer.
All right, in case there's been a bit of confusion, I think it's time to clarify what the comparative models are on the side of opening government and opening opposition. Now, you recognize that there is a spectrum of opinions, right, from the very liberal to the very far right, right? And in the opposition model, the status quo, you will be able to see opposing opinions from a narrower spectrum with less frequency and more likely from more personal sources, like the closer friends in your social circle. That's not to say that it won't happen at all, but it's definitely going to happen at a reduced extent. That's what opposition is prepared to defend. Their side seeks to expand the spectrum in terms of frequency, in terms of the diversity of opinions, as well as the range of sources in which you're going to get that from. That's the relevant comparison. So it's not a black and white scenario. What then is the end game? What is our narrative on opening opposition? I think we have the more nuanced view of how human beings operate. We think change, especially political change, especially the way you view racial, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, happens in two ways. It is gradual and it is personal. It's gradual because you cannot inundate them with stances that are too far from where you are right now, otherwise they'll simply react negatively against it. Personal, because chances are, but the more you build empathy with otherwise nameless, faceless people on the opposite side of the political spectrum, the more likely it is you are going to change. That is why when a black guy makes friends with a KKK local leader, like assuming that stage happens, and it does happen, although not very often, right? That's where it's greatest. Whereas merely shouting at these KKK people is not going to change their opinion whatsoever. That's how human nature is, and that's why our model plays into this human nature far better than that of the opening government. So let's clarify our stance. Obviously, we're perfectly fine with governments regulating against harm if the regulation works better than the alternatives. That's what the entire debate is about. That's why we say the opening 6 minutes of Brian's speech is very irrelevant, because the mechanisms for which his model was going to work was only proven in the last minute. And I'll take all of those down, including whatever Maketab brought up in his DPM speech. So we stand for three things, right? Government's policy is comparatively less effective. It makes things actively worse, and I'll explain what Andrew's already said in his outlook. And then our alternative is better. Let's deal with the first part, right? Why the government policy is going to be comparatively ineffective. No, thank you, I'll take you at 5:30. I think the first thing that Elo already talks about is they are going to do one of several things. They might not click the articles at all because they're very clickbaity and generally get turned off by the most clickbaity of these articles. One, or that even if you're talking about maybe pages of celebrities and people's comments, or how pages of celebrities tend to post their own articles and their own narratives, right? Or if you're talking about people in your acquaintance circle, right? These are often the worst, in the minds of the people who you're trying to convince, these are often the worst case portrayals of what the alternative of the alternate side of the political spectrum is going to be like, right? So obviously you're going to be exposed to a wider spectrum of these things, and the chances are they're not going to engage, they're going to react negatively, or they're not going to click it, or they're simply going to write back directly for news articles and stuff like that. And I think DPM already considered the majority of cases. So the question is whether on the balance of probabilities, their marginal minority cases are going to outweigh the active harm that we say will happen under our side. No, thank you. Second key area. Why does the government's policy actively make things worse? I'm going to explain this at the local level, and then I'm going to explain this at the broader level. Local level, because by expanding the spectrum in terms of the frequency of the articles or like comments or posts you see, increasing the spectrum of opposite opinions that you see from other sources, right? So not only your closer friends, but your acquaintances and the acquaintances of acquaintances, or like news, or if you want to talk about alternative news sources, other news sources, no thank you. You're basically seeing the worst version, or what you think is the worst version of the opposing side's argument. And there is an incentive for why this happens, right? Because typically news aggregators or people who post, celebrities who post like political posts on their news feeds on Facebook and Twitter, they want to first and foremost try to galvanize their own voter base or galvanize their own like client base if you're a celebrity or Instagram like celebrity or whatever. And then secondarily, if the aim exists at all, to try and convince people on the opposite side of the spectrum. That's why, like when you expand the spectrum of like sources that you consider, what happens is you see the more extreme versions, and that is bad because you're turning people away from evaluating the other side of the political spectrum in a more objective manner. That's the first problem. Secondly, you get pissed off at attempts to manipulate social media, right? Because when they expand the spectrum of sources for alternative political news, right, they are also cutting into your personal space. As DPM says, it's not merely about news articles, it is about the posts that your friends and your acquaintances, as well as like your local celebrities post. You are cutting into the personal space that is a person's newsfeed, right? And even if you believe that it is a fiction that they chose, that they chose to be part of a certain political spectrum, after they relax, stop bragging, right? So what happens in the end is that they get turned off precisely because they feel that they're being endangered. They are being put into a siege mentality. They will at least believe this rightly or wrongly, and you're not going to make it far less likely for them to believe things on a local level. In a broader level, basically, they might try to do things that prune your social circles even more. Cut out your acquaintances because, like, shit, they're intervening into my personal space. I'm seeing more than nonsense. I want to cut them out because I have no patience for this level of barracking. And all that, they're going to change the broader narrative about how they see these things, right? That they react negatively to everything they see in the rest of society, as opposed to merely the stuff that they see on social media because the negative impressions of what you said. Brian, as you know, how think you?
All right, so if like we could buy into our worst case scenario where people are actually apathetic towards these things, or at least we use it to spark up some kind of reaction. Exactly how do you spark or trigger this reaction from it?
Right, so that's where I talk about how our alternative is better, right? Because the prevailing assumption seems to be, oh no, we're never going to be aware of these issues. Oh no, we're never going to be provoked. Nonsense. Even in my liberal bubble on Facebook and Twitter, there are occasionally people who are Trump deniers, Trump apologists, climate change deniers, people like that, right? And they're pretty intelligent people as well. Worst case scenario that Op is prepared to accept. You will still get these people, you will still have to engage with them. Like, it's going to be on a reduced frequency. But at the very least, it is a frequency that is marginally more manageable psychologically for me, as someone who has been in that bubble for a period of time. And I imagine the guy on the right end of the spectrum is also going to feel a similar way. Will change be slower as a result? Yes, because you have fewer flashpoints, right? Will change be gradual? Yes, because you're going to walk them slowly, like from their own intuition, their own liberal bubble or conservative bubble, and walk them slowly to a more moderate ground. But will change happen? Yes. Will change happen on their side? No. Because social media sites are not just news aggregators, as I said. They are places where people meet on neutral platforms and neutral social circles, and it is in that particular zone, as opposed to Breitbart.com's Facebook page, for example, that you get far more nuance and neutral discussion, even if there is significant disagreement at first. Right? We admit, like, our side is slow to change, but it changes things far better than your side ever could.
I thank the speakers and now invite the member of the
I think firstly it's important to note that there's a dichotomy in the way social media works. That is, it's either you're forcing people into echo chambers or you are not. At best, opening up is explaining why they're able to get people out of echo chambers and interactions more, but they don't engage with the fact that people are literally being forced into echo chambers and there's a negative harm to that in itself. That's a problem with their case. Two other horrible things they did in this debate. Firstly, they're just willing to engage only in absolutes. Everyone won't click that link. Everyone will read this thing, right? I don't even think they can begin to prove that at all in this debate, right? I'm willing to buy that some people won't click, right? But I don't see what's the problem with that. At least some people are getting access to it. Secondly, people will only see extreme views, therefore they'll be turned off with the other side and are unwilling to engage, right? Some people will, some people won't, right? What they need to engage with is why that benefit we get isn't something that is important. Secondly, they really have no problem with people engaging with other views, even on social media. They want it through celebrities and all the rest, right? So, like, guys, at best, we're just making it better on our side of the house in this debate. The problem with that, first of all, is that it screws over CO and the arguments about safe spaces, which I'm sure they're going to bring up in this debate, because that would literally be a contradiction with what opening is talking about, right? But secondly, I'll explain why that's important and why we get it better in CG, right? But just a few responses to OO before I move on to my materials, right? So this argument about how they already have some interactions in status quo with people. Firstly, we say great, we just increase the amount of interactions we get on our side of the house. But secondly, we say we are also able to get not just people within the middle ground who are willing to interact and have friends that are actually with opposing views, but we also get people who would never be able to get access to all of this information. Moving on to my extensions. Firstly, I'm going to explain why it's important for people to reassess their preferences. And secondly, I'm going to explain why social media is the best way for you to get across the aisle interactions when it comes to views in this debate, right? Two reasons why it's important for people to reassess their preferences. Firstly, implicit bias. What's important to note here is the fact that people are literally forced into the assumptions that they hold. These are literally beliefs that go into they're going through your cognitive blind spots, right? That in many cases you don't really know the reason why you believe certain things that you believe. Like, say you be a racist or whatever, right? What we do, right, even if we don't change the minds of every single person, is that we give them an opportunity to question their beliefs, at the very get-go, and that's something that we think is important in this debate, right? Because what happens is, so they say we want people to be able to get access to things that they want to get access to, right? We say force, right? They are literally forced into those beliefs that they hold at the point in which you literally confirm it when you go on social media, and all you see are things that confirm those biases that you have. We need to be able to question it, to have that trigger for people to be able to question those beliefs at the very get-go. If what we want in this debate is for people to be able to reassess those preferences and at least have reasons behind why they hold the beliefs that they hold, we think it's very much okay for us to have this information, for people to be able to access all of these things, right? So we allow people to own their ideas as opposed to having ideas that they are slave to, in which we were born into a home, right? So I think this is quite clear. At the point in which you're born into a home within the southern part of the United States, right, you're more likely to have specific views because of the community you were in, because of the family members. Those are literally beliefs that you had no say in, or were simply forced on you. We think the ability for you to question it is something that we think is important. But secondly, what happens when you have opposing ideas, right? And this is why I go a bit more nuanced than just saying absolute in this debate, right? We think in many cases some people will agree, and in many cases some people won't agree with these documents, right? What is important is, in agreeing or not agreeing, you are already questioning what you believe, right? So if I believe something and I look at an article that questions that belief that I have, at the very least, I'm able to question that belief. That means, A, even if I agree, I'm agreeing and getting reasons for the beliefs which I hold. And if I disagree, I'm more likely to have a more nuanced view of that belief which I hold, right? That means I'm more likely to leave extremes of saying everybody will read this article, right? And listening to this speech and knowing that there are more nuances in how people are able to understand things better at the point in which they're able to reassess their preferences. Secondly, why we think social media is the best way of getting across the aisle information. Firstly, we think social media have an obligation to do this in themselves, right? So the current algorithm that takes place in status quo, there is literally no objective reason for why you only see the posts that your friends have. It's simply for the sake of profit and for you to be able to get as much resources as you can get. We say that locks people up into echo chambers and locks them up to become slaves of ideas that they have no say in, right? That means that they have an obligation to break that, especially at the point in which social media is branding themselves as a source of information and a way for people to get access to information. This means that they literally have an obligation to make sure what people get is actually information, as opposed to just confirming biases that every single person has in the status quo, right? At the point in which you brand yourself in that way, that means you literally need to prove a corrective to what's already going on in status quo. If you say you're a news platform and you're going to give people information, then you have to do so, and that's an obligation that they have. Secondly, you're better able to reassess your preferences online as opposed to offline, which OO was fighting for in this debate, right? Why is that the case? Two reasons. First, you're less likely to be defensive when it's online. You don't have your friends around. You don't have any expectation to still hold on to your views. That means you're less likely to just simply jump out and say everything everyone is saying is false. At the point in which you're alone, that's when you're better able to question some beliefs, right? So if you're somebody if you're someone who is a racist, right, you might not want to question those beliefs outside, but if you're within the four walls of your room, you're more likely to not be so defensive and actually read these articles to find out why exactly that's the case, right? So if it's the case that I'm walking up to you and explaining these things, in many cases you don't want to be having that discussion. We think you're more likely to be less defensive when you're within your house. closing.
You need to tell us why these individuals cannot do this on their own accord, because the point is those information still exists. You're still forcing them to see those things every day, and why is that a utility?
Implicit bias, right? You have these views without knowing them. They go through the back door, and those are the biases that you have. But even if what you want is to have some level of people getting to interact with other ideas, we say we have it better when it's done through social media, and here's why what I'm explaining, right? You're less likely to be defensive. Secondly, we think being online is a lot easier for you to search out ideas, right? So if you get an idea online, it's very easy for you to open the next tab and read about these things, right? And that's something that we think is important for you to be able to understand many of these ideas, as opposed to when you're just interacting with someone and forget about that discussion as just something that happened within your day. But thirdly, the range of interaction is something that we think is extremely important. You're not locked up by geographical limitations, right? So you don't have to leave the South to get to have other ideas, but you as a person are able to go online where you have different widespread information, and that's something you're able to get access to, right? Geographical limitations are things you have on your side of the house. What I think opposition needs to accept in this debate is the fact that it's literally a dichotomy. Status quo continuously pushes people into echo chambers with no hope of them leaving the slavery of information that they have no access to and no say in what they hold at all. We think we've proved very corrective on our side of the house. Extremely proud to put it.
Thank you, Speaker, for speech in my member of opposition.
So the extension coming from CO is going to be very simple. We're actually going to expound on the argument of how this is more likely going to change individuals in terms of the ground. We're going to expand on the Elo's idea of political change and show to you how that will essentially range more of society and affects those individuals that exist in the spectrum. That means whether or not you're moderate, whether or not you want to be part of this discussion or not, there will be repercussions of those kind of laws, and that affects individuals on a day-to-day basis. And that itself is harmful, and we'll compare that to the utility that government wants to bring in this debate. But let's understand a few things and a few characterizations. Firstly, social media doesn't necessarily move me towards changing anything, right? We think that even if those individuals wanted to engage in this is something which they fail to realize. Those things kind of exist to begin with. Those information which you're going to now show to those individuals exist naturally. Here's where we are going to take bite the bullet, right? The reason why we say we're going to finish 8 is because we are willing to argue certain things, like, for example, those individuals may be biased, may be put into systems which may have already from the start push them into a particular direction. However, as a state, we recognize those being conservative, being a liberal exists, and we are fine with parents raising their children in those kind of ways, right? We allow them to send them to church every day. Those kind of autonomy we give to these individuals. However, the thing which you need to realize there is that we still allow those individuals to access those kind of things when they are ready. The thing is, which government's case is this, you're forcing these individuals to interact and to access these forms of information whether they are ready or not. And that is where we see the problem is. Because just because I may be biased, just because I may be in a system in which I believe I'm extremely conservative, extremely liberal, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to live in that forever. I may be a family which grew up and went to church every day, but I can still be an atheist. But the point is, I'm willing to explore those things on my own, and we think that by forcing other individuals who are not ready to accept this, repercussions to those individuals and the groups that they associate to is far worse. Let's move on then to my first argumentation. First argumentation, how will this lead to more aggression? Because let's just understand one thing, right? Discussions can exist in society if an individual is ready or not, right? I may be a pro-NRA, but if I'm essentially conservative to that extent, no matter whether or not this policy exists, I'm not going to make those forms of change just to suddenly have a discussion, right? The problem here is under your side, you're forcing me to view all these kinds of information. So at the point in which I do come up with a form of discussion table, right, if I'm ready, I'm not going to have the discussion which you want me to have. Because if and this is the comparative here, if we allow these individuals to come to the discussion table on their own, they're more likely going to be engaging with the other side of the spectrum. They're more likely going to have a positive discourse into where they stand and why they essentially exist. Because the assumption which these guys came up is that I'm unaware of everybody else. No, people are not unaware of the other side of the spectrum. They just choose to ignore it, like how I Maketab responded to my POI. And that's the problem, because now you're trying to force these individuals into an artificial discussion because they suddenly see all this information. But the problem is, when they're going to discussion when they're not ready, they're more likely going to be aggressive in the way they have this discussion and pull to their own ideas. That means you're more likely going to create these individuals into their own bubbles as a whole. The problem here is now I cannot have the forms of safe space. I cannot have social media, which used to be my safe bubble, right? Where am I going to create the safe space? It's more likely going to push for more groups which can create those forms of political affiliation which support my ideas. What do you mean by this? That means in a liberal context, I'm going to push for more politicians to essentially push for conservative laws and stuff. The reason for this is because the safe space which used to exist on social media no longer exists. That means when that is taken away, I need to affirmatively have a tangible safe space, which means I'm going to push for conservative laws to exist in my areas. Now, this is essentially quite possible, right? If that safe space which used to exist for those individuals to be whoever they want is lost, they are going to seek for alternatives. No, this is why we think it makes it far worse. Why? It pushes this this conservative what happens here? It ruins society and this as a whole. Why? When you have most of these individuals, chill. When you have most of these individuals pushing for these forms of conservative law to reaffirm their belief in real life and away from social media, it affects those other individuals in society. Like in Texas, for example, which you consider as a conservative state, right? Those individuals of differing opinions exist, right? They live in harmony even if they want to ignore each other, which Maketab clearly said was fine. The problem here is when you try to reaffirm these forms of laws and reaffirm these forms of belief and make it concrete, they're more likely to affect this individual on a day-to-day basis, right? Whether or not they want to engage in these ideas. The problem with that is that it affects other individuals, even if you're in middle level of the spectrum. And that's why it's problematic. We think that the problem with in all of this, right, is that it makes it harder for individuals to come out when they want to have a discussion because they're essentially not doing this on their own accord. They're doing this because it's been fabricated by society. Closing.
Yeah, so unless you can prove that these people are literally going to leave Facebook, right, they're still going to have access to opposing ideas. That means they have a more nuanced views as opposed to extreme views. So even if they have their safe spaces outside of Facebook, it's okay because it's more nuanced.
But the problem is those forms of information that don't exist either way. Like the problem inside government here is that they're assuming that those information does not exist. I cannot access those forms of information just because I'm in a conservative society. The problem is if I wanted to come out of that bubble, if I wanted to have a changing opinion, I can do so, right? The problem with this is that you're forcing them to try to engage into something which they're not ready to engage. The discussion will never go in your way. This moves on to the next idea where we're going to argue that individuals have those forms of autonomy to begin with, but to have those forms of differing opinion. We believe this is important. As a state, we recognize that society is different. We recognize that if you want to be, if you recognize that there can be a conservative individual and liberal individual and people in the middle, we should respect those forms of ideologies and not try to change those individuals' opinion. We think that the best states can do is essentially allow organically for these individuals to come out of those bubbles as a whole. Because the point here is that if we try to force you to come into an opinion, you're not going to create the opinion on your own. You're going to be pressured by the people around you because suddenly everybody's like, oh, we should start engaging with these opinions. We should engage with those kind of opinions. The problem with that is that it's not organic for these individuals, and whether or not these individuals will actively internalize those kind of opinion and come to the discussion with a proper discourse is problematic. They more likely be accepting this kind of policies on a surface level, but will not internalize sorts of ideas. We believe that the comparative is simple. We don't think that it's destroying the fabric of society if individuals don't want to engage, because even government agreed if they wanted to ignore, it's fine. However, we believe that if you force an individual to come out of the shell before they're ready for this, they may not necessarily react to this in a positive manner and feel that you're encroaching on the liberties which state recognize they exist. For that, we beg to oppose.
Final speaker for the speech. Invite the final speaker from the proposition side. The proposition list.
Panels, the good thing about Malaysian debate tournament is, right, we always run like liberal views and we think like everyone that we everything we try to do in status quo is just to empower liberal advantage, and it's just like give advantage to liberal. But the biggest thing we've always missed out that it's this like policy itself, it's two-sided. Right? It's not just like the domination of view like posting like humongous great, like liberal views on conservative view as well. It's about you also posting those conservative ideas on liberals like Facebook was as well, right? And this is where like the entire outbench in this debate have missed the whole purpose of how we achieve at least trigger some level of discourse from our side of the house and break people from like those certain echo chamber by exposing them to more ideas within those triggers, right? So two key things I'll be doing in my speech, and then like we just do rebuttals again. Firstly, I'm going to engage like side-closing opposition on their idea of readiness and stuff like that, and how it directly clashes with what Eric already told you. And secondly, right, how hopefully we never achieve any change through interaction with threats, right? So before then, two key rebuttals I don't quite fit in coming from Skandar's speech, right? Firstly, readiness, right? We don't think like they ever prove to you like when people the other side of the house, what is this readiness, and will it ever happen, or we just like live in a world with the assumption that we will be ready one day, which I don't know how many years that's gonna take, right? I think what trigger readiness is what we've told you from our side of the house, of at least questioning the comfortability at which people access information, something Eric talked to you about, which they never engage with in society. And secondly, right, they wanted to talk about this whole idea of individuals having autonomy on their view. I think Eric already like did a lot of nice like job like on talking to you how not necessarily like people don't actually have autonomy because of that Facebook encourage this implicit biasness which people operating in echo chambers through the algorithm that already exists in status quo. And we think what we are doing also outside of the house is like this challenge or question those implicit biasness that exist within those like within those echo chambers, because we think right due to societal influence that trigger like or that build this algorithm on the side of the house, like it has shifted this discourse, right? Like instead of individuals like going and drafting like more constructive information and stuff, all they are ready to do is to post articles just to like to cater for the echo chamber, right? So here is the difference from our side and why we're different. If you're writing an article as a writer and you know that there's a slight chance this will be read by people with opposing views, you are forced to sit down and write it in a more constructive way in which they are to engage with. But on the side of the house, right, all this writer are left with is writing articles that solely cater within like for the information circulation within the echo chamber system, right? So we don't see how that changes everything, if not confirm the kind of like biasness Eric talked about in this speech, right? But lastly, right, let's actually now like do some form of engagement in terms of like how they actually does like the whole aggression stuff coming from those in opposition, right? So we think like if society is already aggressive, which is something even open hinted on and stuff like that, and there's going to be like this like hilarious or humongous backlash, everybody being apathetic towards Facebook, right? I think actually that's a good thing, right? Like if we can use this apatheticness like to create some kind of readiness or reaction for these individuals to react, right? I think then that's something we actually achieve better on our side of the house, right? So we think these reactions are actually something that is quite good in society, right? So even if they want to abandon social media on our side of the house, right, the kind of safe space like that closing opposition is forcing them to is a more nuanced safe space, like pointed out from our POI, where they are forced to engage with these things, at least like more confirmed ideologies or more diverse ideologies within those circumstances, right? And secondly, right, we think if they are going to run away from those like platforms, right, then we tell you that we have one less extremist group on social media when people like one less echo chamber within the social media platform itself, right? So if like the alt-right movement or the KKK that does not have like vast majority of readers on Facebook, we tell you we have one less problem to worry about on our side of the house. We
One from opening.
a trouble to that. But let's talk about like opening, like engage with opening in this debate, right? But before then, yes,
in today's world, conservatives already perceive that they're being inundated by liberal rhetoric. They perceive that they're being overly politically correct and policing free speech. Tell me why your policy, which exposes people to far more strangers' opinions, will make them less defensive as opposed to more defensive.
Well, you know what you have as a conservative on our side of the house as well now? A like platform for you to write constructive articles to control, like at least engage your liberal readers on our side of the house, right? So that's a benefit, right? We'll claim it, right? Okay, so like interaction with friends and how that's enough, right? It's how kind of like clashes like directly like correlates with these guys like idea of readiness, right? So if they are accusing us that the kind of readers we are going to have on our side of the house are like the abstract readers that are just kind of like reading the headline or reading it like storybooks or whatever, I think that's the kind of readers they have on the side of the house, because we think if your friend like actually posted something online, and even if that's actually the genuine thing that should be posted, from the point of view you're reading or accessing that information, is your biased liberal friend that is posting that article, rather than a more credible source that we have on our side of the house that generate those articles, right? So you're not really interested in like what the article is about. You're just interested the whole ideology you have in your head is like, yeah, probably Eric is back with the whole liberal like conspiracy theory again. I'm really not ready. So we really don't see how that kind of forces any form of discussion, right? And this is why we say like the importance of a neutral discourse zone, right? Is where like individuals are able to go into those like scenarios and have like proper discourse on what they want to engage with, or at least what they're able to engage with on our side of the house. And we think like we pointed out like from site closing obligation that this is the obligation of a platform that has promised you a wide variety of information, which is the obligation like social media have, right, to create this like proper wider product of necessity of discourse to happen, right? So we can influence the kind of discourse people have in those kind of regards without any form of biasness within those circumstances. And we think this is enough, right, for people not to be that apathetic, right, to run away from the entire social media platform, right? So we think like even if it's just to PM your friend is what gets you on social media to read the headline about something that triggers something really important, then we'll take it on our side of it.
Time to speak with the speech, you might find speakers debate the opposition. Yeah.
Panel, something that has been reaffirmed in this debate, that something valuable that Kanda has brought, is that essentially info exists. And people have access to this information, and it's only whether people have the prerogative to want to access this information and to use it. So here's the thing that involves our aim as closing opposition. We want to prove that people, when they are ready, they will talk, they will come out, and they will engage in discourse. And essentially, at the point in which we force these individuals, and this is a contention coming from government, they're essentially forcing these ideological differences for these individuals. What happens is, once police these views, retaliation occurs, and this translates over to real life. This is something valuable that was brought in Kanda's extension speech. But let's deal with the three clashes in this debate. Rebuttals will be integrated. So which side promotes actual discourse? The efficacy of discourse promotion. Essentially, what came up from OG was discourse can happen with the access to information. And this was also derivative in CG, but they asserted once again that there was a necessity for access to information. So one thing I had to deal with was what Maketab said, essentially people can ignore or can have a debate, which is a two-pronged reaction. But essentially, what happens when people have debates more often than not, what happens is individuals become aggressive. Individuals want to affirm. They don't want to change their own hearts. They want to change others' hearts. They want to make sure other people acquiesce to their decisions, to their worldview. So at the point in which when that discussion already becomes polluted and toxic, that's a point in which where discussions don't go anywhere. At a point in which when they realize these discussions aren't heading to any tangible change, what occurs? These individuals decide to take it out to the streets. In this sense, take it out to real life actions. So what happens? These individuals actually go out, vote for decisions that affirm their own beliefs, that fit in with their cognitive biases. So if an individual is an NRA voter, and he went on, when he saw a trolley problem video about liberalism and Karl Marx, and thought, hey, this is something I can have discourse on. He doesn't want to go and change his worldview. Rather, what he wants to do is change the other people's worldviews in this debate that occurs within the comment section. So at the end of the day, this individual gets pissed off. He goes votes for NRA policies in favor. So that makes things far harder. I think we're closing.
Okay, so if as an individual, you know that your view is as equally being led by opposition leader, right? Then why then would you then be so apathetic and so hateful of a status quo? And exactly if they're that apathetic, when will they be ready on your side?
Because it's going to happen slowly. Like one thing that this debate ignores is the fact that real life interaction still occurs. You see your Aunt May during Thanksgiving. You may still talk to your parents who are conservative. These dilution of views still occur. Even beyond social media, like this debate isn't just occurring in this vacuum where people are exclusively only influenced by social media. That's the engagement, and I feel like only Ghana has brought this nuance to this debate in terms of how discourse change. And so, what's the valuable thing that wins us this clash? Essentially, what Ghana told you was access already exists, and this is asserted because essentially discourse doesn't matter whether it's conservative, whether it's liberal, whether or not it's right wing or alternative right in a sense. Because if people don't want to tackle seas, people don't want to listen, people don't want to agree with these ideals, there will be no peaceful resolution. So on our side, because see, it's going to be slow, it's going to be long, but necessarily, at the end of the day, we have a peaceful resolution. We have allowed people to come to these ideals and seek a decision that favors these individuals. So we solve discourse. And this discourse isn't value neutral because essentially we ensure tangible change happens and people essentially get to change their wills in terms of deciding political ideology that Facebook cannot. But I'll deal with another clash. I've already taken one. What best deals with demonization, echo chambers? So basically what the contention that came out from government in this debate was essentially that bias exists, whether it's cognitive, whether it's implicit and all that. But let's deal with that. Because what they kind of bring up in this debate, that essentially he asserted that even if bias existed, it's better that these individuals come on their own. Because even biases can be combated. Biases are this one monolithic, solidified idea that doesn't evolve over time. Like, yeah, this is really valuable because kind of folks analogy, like a person can be born a conservative, go to church every day, but one day you can just wake up and say, hey, I want to be atheist, because these ideas are good, these ideas are values which I treasure and cherish. So like change still exists, guys. It's gonna be slow, or it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be way better because we nullify the the real life implicit effects that occur when you force upon views of individuals. So essentially, what happens when on their side of the house? Because government demonizes and it creates additional echo chambers on their side. Because essentially now individuals, like I'll say, in this kind of Sisyphean hell, in a Facebook comment section, where people are trying to win over hearts, but they're essentially not speaking their brain, not speaking their heart, because they're just throwing a bunch of shade at each other. Like nothing really happens, guys. So on our side of the house, we ensure that interaction still happens. And interaction, even be slow, like this is a trade-off we're willing to take. That yeah, it's gonna be slow, it's not gonna be the most efficient at the short run, but at the long run, people are gonna be willing to acquiesce and are willing to come to a more peaceful resolution. And that's the mutual benefit that comes from closing oppositions. So essentially, government wanting to change people, having this impetus to essentially forcing individuals to acquiesce to ideas, does not nullify the harms of real life. Handle. Let me reiterate that benefit is only mutually exclusive to our side of the house and closing opposition. And so let's deal with the final clash. One side brings a net positive benefit. Because this will directly engage with opening governments, industrial action, and closing government's societal obligation in the sense that Facebook's indeed this gatekeeper, according to Maketab, and like they owe people a duty of care. But here's the thing that Kana mentioned. Essentially, Facebook doesn't owe an obligation to people. That autonomy of people still matters. This is our valuable extension that takes down whatever has come out in the debate from government on that side of the house. Because essentially, Facebook isn't here to police individuals, force individuals to coalesce to ideas. To ideas that are necessarily all about the ideological spectrum. It's about letting individuals have autonomy in terms of what they want on their timeline, or what they want to see, or what they want their friends to see. It's not necessarily about trying to moral police in this case, because that's a benefit that doesn't come. But rather, like this is something that I have to reiterate, that Kanda already brought up, that people will come to change, people will come to a consensus on a decision they want to make. It's better that we let people come to this impetus by themselves rather than forcing these individuals to opt in. Because this is once again, this is the benefit that exists exclusively on our side as closing opposition. We minimize these harms, and like Kanda already told you, we can't force people because it's not their own, like Facebook's owners force these views of people. So essentially, now the owners of these individuals. And why do these individuals still opt in? Because then this leads back to the first thing I mentioned in the first clash, that social interaction still happens. Like I'll say, a diffusion of ideas still occur. So at the end of the day, we still have the benefit of individuals being able to change their alignment on the ways that they see the world. So essentially, what have we brought in this debate? We've solved the problem of echo chambers. We've solved the problem of bringing a tangible benefit, and we've also solved the problem of discourse without making it value neutral. For that reason, we'll deal with the last part of comparative here. Essentially, that on our worst case scenario, change is slow, change is gradual, but change still happens. On the other side of the house, it may make things far worse for individuals on the other side of the spectrum and make political lobbying and things far more toxic and politicized. For that, closing opportunities to go.
Thank you. Thank you.
I thank all speakers for their speeches. Front floor, shake hands if you want to.
Thanks. Thanks. Am I accepting?